I want to talk to you about how a feminine genius makes life or death decisions. So if we go way back, or we're just meeting on Liana Silver, and for the past 20 years or so, I've had a private practice seeing clients. 4 years ago, I wrote this book called Feminine Genius. I'll explain what that is in a minute. And I want to tell you the most amazing story today about a client who's been a client for about 8 years, on and off for about 8 years, making a life or death decision, feminine genius style. Now, I'm actually teaching a class with the same title, How a Feminine Genius Makes Life or Death Decisions. It's in a couple of weeks. I'll tell you about it later. So feminine genius is your inner game skills versus your outer game skills. One way of saying it, a feminine genius is someone who has the courage to put intuition before logic, to put pleasure before productivity, to put compliments before criticism, and to put feelings before thoughts, and have a vibrant, true sense of self and life because of it. So the short answer to the question, how does a feminine genius make life or death decisions, is she puts her intuition before logic, meaning she listens to that still, quieter inner voice, inner game voice that absolutely knows, very trustable inner guidance, before the very loud, overbearing voices of logic and thinking, and also lots of well-researched factoids and important information and other people's very well-meaning opinions. This is not easy to do, but it's very powerful to do. So I got to tell you, so I've been doing this work for about 2 decades. And there are so many miracles. You'd think that this wouldn't happen, but it does. That there are times when a client brings me something that is so life or death, that is so challenging that I think, will this really work? It's worked before in amazing ways, but this is, I don't know about this one. So this is a story I want to tell you about today. So I do have permission to tell this story. And in fact, if you have read my book or will read it, this client is in my book by the name of Georgia. So I'm going to tell a new part of her story. This happened last year. So I want to just say, we're going to talk about pregnancy and childbirth. Maybe that's a trigger warning. And I want it to come with a statement from me. This is a non-dogmatic space. I do not have opinions about how your pregnancy or your childbirth or your labor should go at all. Mine, which I'll share about a little bit, was very unwieldy, not planned. And so this is a question. So there's zero shame in this conversation. So again, feminine genius has the courage to put intuition before logic. So this is a story about Georgia. And Georgia, I have been working with her on and off for about 8 years. When we first started working, she was in a really painful, toxic relationship. And part of our work was to help her get out of that and have the belief that she would still someday have a family. And then we were still working with her as she was going through the repair process for herself, dating process, met a new guy. And then we were working with how to communicate with him well and express her needs and have a really strong relationship, which happened. And they have one child together. And our story begins with her being pregnant with her second child. Amazing journey so far. She is pregnant during the year 2020, during a pandemic. She's 42 years old, which is considered a geriatric pregnancy, which means some people are concerned that there's more risks because she's in her 40s, or really over 35, people get concerned. So there's lots of tension and anxiety about who can go with her to the hospital. She's working with midwives. She has opinions of doctors, etc. So we talk. She's 42 years old. And it is 2 days before her due date. And so 2 days before her due date, And the doctors at the hospital are concerned and say, we have to induce labor on your due date. To let it go past your due date would be really, we get concerned that the baby might go into distress, the baby's life might be at risk, and your life might be at risk, like stressful life or death questions. So Georgia also consults her midwives that she's also working with, and they're like, we're not worried, actually. We do see that even at this somewhat later age of 42, we can wait days, maybe even like 3, 4, 5 days after a due date. This time we wouldn't be worried. We would know the signs to look for and be able to get you to the hospital in time should something happen. Doctors are super concerned, midwives less concerned, but get to a hospital, like it's COVID. It's the COVID time. It's not that easy to stroll into a hospital. So Georgia is thinking and running through the statistics and thinking about her doctors and listening to her midwives, and super anxious, and understandably, and really, really quite making herself sick with this. So I'm trying to decide whether I tell you a little bit about, yeah, I'll tell you. So my own birth and labor happened about 10 years ago. And real quickly, I'll share how important it is. That was another galvanizing moment of how important it is to listen to intuition. So 10 years ago, I'm pregnant, in labor, sort of going smooth, and then something goes off the rails. About 22 hours into labor, I'm exhausted. It's not going well. And I tune in, I am a student of putting intuition before logic, tune in, and I get 2 very clear pieces of intuitive guidance. And the first one is a sentence, very like an auditory command or notification that says, there's no way out for him, meaning my baby. And I thought, that's the stupidest advice I ever heard in her guidance. There is a way out. It's called my vagina. That is how this baby is getting out. Let's go back at it. A little bit more, I tuned in, and then saw a picture, which sometimes intuition comes in pictures, not just words or sounds, of me opening the door to my front door, getting in the car, going to the hospital. Hospital is not in my plan. Opening the door to the hospital, opening the door to the emergency room and getting a C-section, also not in my plan. And I wanted to just again say thank you very much for sharing, not in my plan. This must not be inner guidance because it doesn't feel right to me. And so I disregarded that. Another couple hours of very painful labor. And at one point, the midwives that I was working with turned to each other, very concerned look, said the words, transverse arrest, get her bag, we're going to the hospital. We had just enough time to do a planned C-section, not in my plan, but planned. They didn't have to rip me apart. They could just slice. Baby healthy. My son is 10 years old at the time I'm recording this video. And it was really upsetting to me that it didn't go according to plan for me. I did not want to go to the hospital. I did not want to have a C-section, but I was grateful I was healthy. Baby was healthy. 1 month later, I was reading a birth story of another mother in a very similar situation. And she said she also had the condition transverse arrest. I had no idea what that meant, but reading her birth story, she said she was looking in medical journals, and the transverse arrest is a very risky position the baby gets in where they can't actually fit through the pelvis. They can't fit through the birth canal. Underneath the picture that shows this position in medical journals, there's a little quote. It's called the no way out position. And I nearly started crying and got chills and thought, oh, my inner voice told me that. I didn't even know what transverse arrest was. I didn't know, but it told me no way out. This is the no way out position. And then told me to go get a C-section. And when I asked the midwives what would have happened before there were C-sections, they said, well, the baby would come out eventually, but we didn't know how much damage. In essence, baby could have died, I could have died. My inner guidance was actually saying, to save the most life-giving way we can guide you, you and baby, is because there's no way out through the vagina. You got to go out. You got to go have a different way out. Go open these doors to the operating room. Go. And so that was a moment where I really deeply connected again, promised to really listen to my own inner guidance and to really work with others on theirs. Back to Georgia. So now we're talking, and it is one day before her due date. And she's like, what should I do tomorrow? Should I go to the hospital and get induced? It seems just fine, but I know that there are risks and complications to me, to the baby. Should I wait? I could be putting me and my baby in a life or death situation. And this was one of those moments where I was like, we got to talk to your intuition, but I don't know if this is going to work. Like, shit, this is the life of my client and the life of her baby. I hope I know what the F I'm talking about. And so we took our session, and she really tuned in, and I was like, well, what do you feel? You know, what's going on? What's wrong with the anxiety? What's going on with your anxiety? What's going on with baby? And intuition, you know, it just comes, it's so unique to each person. Intuition can come in sentences and sounds and visuals and feelings, etc. And Georgia got this feeling, or a feeling visual, that part of the anxiety was that the baby kept turning. I mean, she literally could feel it turning in her belly. And she got the sense that the baby wasn't sure how to get ready to come out. And she was responding to Georgia, to Mom's anxiety about all this, the situation. So in that session, after some decoding of all of that, we had a plan for the next 24 hours that Georgia would just really work on calming her nervous system, resting, de-stressing, de-anxiety-ifying, and start to visualize and like connect with the baby and be like, no, you want to get in this position, head down. This is the way out. We're working together. Yeah, it's real sweet working with the baby. And then we started talking a little bit about, with her first child, when did her labor start? And it started with her first child, which is very typical, not always, but definitely with me too, 2 or 3 in the morning. And so I said, can you just talk to the babes? And you say, and by the way, this is the right position to be in. And just mentioning, you know, 2 or 3 a.m. if you wanted to help start the labor, that would be an amazing, great time. So Georgia went off. We connected 24 hours later, and she said, well, she felt a lot calmer and felt like, you know, there was a connection going on with the baby, but labor hadn't started. So it's her due date. The doctors are like, get in. We're worried. It's COVID, hospitals, scary. You could kill your baby and yourself. Midwives are like, we support you in whatever decision you want. I think it's going to be okay. And so she just tuned in and she was like, I will delay the induction 24 hours. So she's edging into a zone where the doctors are telling her it's very risky, but for her, she feels like she wants to continue to connect with the baby and do her thing for another 24 hours. So the next morning, I'm like biting my nails, checking, we're texting back and forth. She texts me that she's on the way to the hospital because at 2 or 3 in the morning, she started labor. Her and the baby started her labor. The labor is happening so quickly, they barely make it to the hospital, that they do deliver naturally, no induction and no chemicals needed, deliver naturally. And barely even made it to the hospital because it was such like a quick, she almost had the baby in the car. Healthy baby, healthy mom. Life or death decision made with the courage of putting intuition before logic. And that logic was important. It's important to know all those things. And if her intuition had said, go get the induction, hallelujah. But it didn't. It said something else. And she was not guaranteed a healthy outcome. None of us are. It's risky. It's totally risky. But but it worked. And it works more of the time than it doesn't, in my opinion. Like, holy shit, this works. There is this intuitive intelligence in our inner game inside of us that is privy to information that our logical minds and even the really important research and other people's opinions doesn't always have access to. Now, here's the thing. So Georgia started working with me 8 years ago, and she started paying attention to that. She had intuition, that she had inner knowing. So she started paying attention to her needs and her signals, et cetera, 8 years ago, right? She started small. She started with what I call low stakes decisions, so that when a really high stakes decision, a life or death decision, came into her life, she knew the pathway to reorient, to put aside the voices of logic and opinions and research and really connect in to her intuition. It's still not easy. It's just that she had some practice beforehand. So I always suggest practice with small stuff, like what to wear the pants or wear the skirt, what to order off the menu, take the highway or take the local streets, and start that way. It builds your confidence. You can notice, oh, I listened in that situation and it worked out well. Ah, okay. And it calibrates you more to your own intuitive guidance. So stuff works. Stuff works. Every single time I have a doubt, it just blows me away. Blows me away. She's really cute too. She's a really cute baby. So I'm teaching this class, How a Feminine Genius Makes Life or Death Decisions. I'm going to take you through the foundational things that Georgia learned and has been practicing for a while, and some of the more advanced things that help you work up to the higher stakes decisions. So if you want to join me, you can. There is a catch. The catch is that I offer that class inside my online community, which is called Deep End. It's called Deep End because it's where feminine genius comes alive. Because we go deep, and because so many times when we think I'm crazy, I'm going off the deep end, actually what's going on is that we are intuiting or feeling or womaning or feminine geniusing, and it's not crazy, it's genius. So that's the online community. In the Deep End, there will be links and information of how to check that out. See if it might be for you and see if you might join us for this class. It's going to be beautiful. So I hope you come join us. Viva la feminine genius.